Welcome to the Everything Embodiment Podcast, where I will help you find peace, understanding, and love all within your human body, enhancing your mind-body connection through the exploration of vast ideas, concepts, and modalities, discussions all meant to propel you along your own unique spiritual journey. I'm your host, Amber Miller. Welcome back to another episode of Everything Embodiment. I'm your host, Amber Miller. It's my goal for this season to open a container for stories and conversations that really reconnect us to what it means to live fully embodied. So that's through intuition, healing, creativity, and the moments that awaken something deeper within us. We began last week with the wisdom of animals in spirit, and that was just the beginning. In upcoming episodes, I'll be diving into astrology, herbal self-care, and intuitive healing practices to help you connect more deeply with your body, your purpose, and your own inner guidance. I will even be announcing a few upcoming projects that I have I'm very excited to talk about. But for now, take a deep breath, settle in, allow yourself to receive the wisdom and warmth that today's interview brings. Today's episode is a powerful exploration of what it truly means to be an embodied spirit. To move through deep healing, trust your intuition, and step fully into your own magic. I'm sitting down with Regan Caruthers, author of Tragic Magic, to share her journey of spiritual awakening, healing childhood wounds, and navigating the unseen forces that shape our lives. Regan's story is a testament to undying strength, resilience, and the power of subconscious healing. In this conversation, we explore what it means to embody your spirit while processing trauma, the role of intuition in healing, and the magic that unfolds when we surrender to divine guidance. She also shares jaw-dropping stories of synchronicity and how trusting the signs from the universe has led her to exactly where she is meant to be. If you're on a journey of healing, awakening, or simply looking for inspiration to trust the path unfolding before you, this episode is a reminder that you too are an embodied spirit with infinite wisdom within. Welcome to Everything Embodiment. Today I am honored to have Regan Caruthers, author of Tragic Magic, joining us. This book is not just a story, it's your personal journey through a profound spiritual awakening, deep childhood wounds, subconscious healing, and an unwavering trust in your intuition. Regan, thank you for being here and sharing your incredible journey with us.
Well, sure. Thanks for having me.
Before we dive into the book, and I really want to get into it, can you share a bit about your personal journey and what led you to write Tragic Magic?
Well, sure. I was told to. And it was funny, I would, over the years, had a number of who were psychics, and sometimes I would pay for their time. And some of them I didn't know, they were new to me. And I remember, gosh, this was probably 10 years before I started writing. This one guy in San Francisco, after coming, out of wherever he travels to tune in, says, "So when are you going to start writing your book?" I was like, okay. Yeah, I had been given that directive a long time before I started writing. And my intent in doing so was twofold. Another level of processing, right, of my own direct experience, but more importantly, to be of service to others, hoping that the mess of what I had known, the trauma of what I had known, and then the hope of what it means to embody the love of God, to be informed by that intelligence, and we all have access to it. We just need to create the conditions, for that receptivity. That in sharing all of that, people would decide to begin, or if they had begun in some kind of healing journey, whatever that was, it doesn't have to look like mine, that they would deepen their commitment. Because as you know from having read it, it wasn't really until I became disciplined in my practice, having experienced, so many remarkable things. And yet, without discipline, we can't sustain the awareness.
Yeah.
And, that's not a popular, it's not a popular teaching. And you see a lot of, spiritual teachers that publicly really don't talk about. It's kind of like, do these 5 things and everything will be great. Well, No offense. And it's a process, right? And we're always returning.
Yes.
We never graduate. We're never certified in
Yeah.
becoming completely divinely embodied, right? Yeah. And so you return to the traumas. You return to where you need to return to within yourself, with a different awareness, maybe some new tools, maybe more capacity. So it's like more like a spiral. So I describe in my book the ancestral trauma that I was born into, right?
Mhm.
And the profundity of my ancestors and who they were, particularly my mom and dad. So this decision that my mother made at the age of 3 for me to attend this incredible school where I began learning meditation and doing Tai Chi for gym and singing devotional songs every morning about the power of divine love and conscious thought. And the pedagogy of the school was informed by Maxwell Maltz, who was on the board of the school. He had written the groundbreaking book in the 60s, Psycho-Cybernetics, which birthed the positive psychology movement. So much of what we sang, so much of what we experienced in the day was informed by his research. And that, namely, is, the story you tell yourself becomes your experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had that, remarkable beginning, all the while dealing with some real conflicts at home, right? It's my mother who couldn't regulate her access to other dimensions. And over time, it ate her up. And read about the remarkable trajectory of her young life.
Yes.
So, I learned in witnessing her the importance of self-regulation and the importance of discipline. And while it wasn't until my mid 40s that I truly became disciplined, the need to do so was baked in real early.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then, I had a dramatic awakening at 27, which I'm happy to describe in more detail. I don't like giving too many spoilers about
Yeah.
the book, but I do want people to read it, not to make a buck, just because of the journey that it represents and the gift that I think it can be to a reader. But yeah, that dramatic awakening at 7, everything, it changed that, reconnected me to the wisdom teachings of my youth. And, just a few years after my awakening, I, found myself as staff at the Heart Math Institute, leading
Yeah.
retreats and programs for HeartMath in the Santa Cruz Mountains. Yeah, and I'm sure your listeners understand, and you, I think, understand that once you have that kind of breakthrough experience, forever change.
Yeah.
Whether you hold on to that awareness or not, yeah, it's better if you can. But once you know the truth of who you are, nothing's the same.
So well put. I'm having a hard time coming up with words to even respond. First of all, what a blessing to have had that foundation of the elementary preschool that you went to, and that you also had the freedom though to be you and live your life, and you found yourself coming back to those tools after, your spiritual awakening. The things that you learned as a child you came back to, which I think is just really seals the lesson. I have young kids and I'm trying to teach them basically everything you just said. And we even talked this morning about what you tell your mind is what you're going to create. Because my daughter said, "Oh, I think Theo's going to have a bad day today." And I said, "Oh, no, no, no." I said, our brains are going to believe what we tell ourselves. So if we tell that, then we are going to have a bad day. So anyway, I just
And
really
she might
love
be
that.
right. She
Yeah.
might actually have picked up on something,
Well, he
right?
was being really grouchy this morning, and she goes, "I think he's gonna they do color charts, and she goes, I think he's probably not gonna have a blue day." And blue's like a higher up there color. I'm like, "No, let's not set that intention. Let's turn that around." But yeah, she's definitely, you mentioned in the book how your older son was really, he'd always drop these little bombs of being open, and my daughter definitely does that too. I want
Yeah,
to.
I highly recommend the book The Joyful Child by Dr. Peggy Jenkins.
Okay.
Um, you should still be able to find it, even though it's probably not in print. And then she also wrote another book, Nurturing Spirituality in Children, which are filled with object lessons to convey spiritual principles. I had worked with her right after my awakening, and it was her colleague Joseph Chilton Pierce, who wrote the book Magical Child, The Crack in the Cosmic Egg, suggested that I go to HeartMath to check it out. So
Oh, wow. So you mentioned obviously a big point of your book is the spiritual awakening, the coming back to, yourself. Spiritual awakenings are often messy, painful, and life-changing, but they're also, I feel like people romanticize spiritual awakenings, but I think they just come with a deep unraveling. What were some of the hardest truths you had to face?
well, post awakening, the hardest thing to face was all the demons and dark energy that was present,
Yeah.
in my life at night. I wasn't
Yeah.
asleep. People say, "Oh, were you dreaming?" I'm like, "No, I was very much awake." But what that teaches and the process of awakening, if you think about it from a chemical perspective, there's this chemicalization that occurs because you have sort of arrived at a higher vibration, regardless of how long you hold it, right? You are arrived in that place. Well, everything in you that is not aligned with that energy has to be purged.
Yeah.
And I don't have all the insights about why my process was as it was, right? But what it taught me was that the energy of love can transmute dark energy. That
Absolutely.
that first happened, in healing my stepfather, who was this violent, abusive force in life. And in, the next morning after my awakening, he was the only one I could reach by phone because I was in San Francisco at this national sales meeting. It's
Well,
been
like
over.
the universe gives us what we need, and I just can't. I remember you said you never had issues reaching your mom before, but you couldn't reach her. So you're like, I gotta call someone. I guess I'll call him. And just that is listening to your intuition, trusting your intuition, and it healed you and him.
Yeah, I mean, that was over 30 years ago, and he remains gentle and kind. And he's still here, which I don't even understand. He's like 85. He's like
Oh,
so
yeah.
disabled and so much pain. But I think, karmically, every day that he is here and he's kind and gentle, he's burning karma.
Yeah. Oh.
So good for him. He might need to live till he's 120.
So speaking of your stepdad, your book speaks to childhood trauma, and it's not just your stepdad. You experienced a lot of trauma, but your book does speak to childhood trauma and the subconscious patterns that stem from it. How did you recognize and break free from those cycles? Was it the unconditional love that you felt from the spiritual wake? Is that, would you say, what helped facilitate?
Yeah, I mean, that becomes a new internal baseline, right? A new reference point. Yeah, but it was not, I mean, even though I was able to, heal my stepfather, the healing for me was not immediate. Yeah, sure, there was a big cleansing of a lot of
That's well
inner
put.
trauma and pain.
Yeah.
So I was cleansed and yet pretty dark in there. So, what I developed, and this is sort of the framework of both my Ready to Awaken courses that I teach and my inner life coaching. And again, I didn't read this in a book, or if I did, I don't remember. And so I'm not attributing it if I did, but I don't think I did so long ago. But what I chose to do, and it was an organic process, was really look at developmental stages, right? So, birth to 3, 6, et cetera, and really get honest about what I had experienced and what belief about myself or the larger world was created because of what I had known. So we do all of this unconsciously. So, for example, you remember the scene where my mother finds me at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and I'm 15 months old and she finds me making my own sandwich on the kitchen. Okay,
That was
I don't even know how I opened a mayonnaise jar. I can barely do that now. But what got imprinted because of her profound neglect of me was that I couldn't trust anybody. And I wasn't wrong, right? That traumatized part of me isn't wrong to believe that. But as you unpack all of this, right, these traumatic imprints, what belief system got imprinted because of it? How did you choose to cope, right?
yeah.
Really doing that unpacking And then the critical part is to provide loving witness to that part of you. So I was able to take that energetic baseline that I awakened into knowing and cultivate, like grab that energy from God, basically, and bring it to that inner toddler. Not to change her mind, but just to sit there with her and say, I love you, and I'm not going to ever abandon you again. I'm so sorry for all the ways that I did abandon you. Tell me everything. And just hold loving witness. And in so doing, that part of me, in feeling love, in feeling safe, in knowing that she isn't alone because, the adult awakened Regan is with her, then she doesn't have to act out anymore.
That's
She
so
doesn't
beautiful.
need to try to get my attention. She doesn't need to be in charge. That's exhausting for a toddler to be in charge of her life. Like, yeah. And so that was the process that I created, continue to come back
Yeah.
our earlier conversation that we're not done and that, sometimes we have to return like this, like infinite spiral, just return and truly love ourselves.
And I'm not going to give any spoilers away, but you use that approach later in the book, and it was just like with your body. And so everyone, now it's when you went through your spiritual awakening and doing all your shadow work and all that, shadow work wasn't a buzzword the way it is now. I feel lucky on my path to have run into it when I did, because I'm not sure I would have intuitively done it the way you did. But
Mm.
even how you used it on your body, I just thought that was beautiful.
That's the example of the infinite nature of healing, in that when I was needing to heal my body after coming so close to death, it was past life trauma that my heart thought that what we had experienced was assassination. Because
Yeah.
as an Aztec and other lifetimes, I was killed by my body physically being taken out of my body. I remember as a little girl, or maybe I was a adolescent, seeing one of the Raiders of the Lost Ark movies. It was Temple of Doom, and yeah, there is that scene where that person is being assassinated by having them extracted out of their body. I remember times being so freaked out about that. But anyway, yeah. So I needed to convince my heart that what Dr. Damiano had done was in the highest and was to save
Yeah.
life, not to extinguish it.
It was very clear in your book to me that even while facing your own pain, you have been a guiding light for others. How did you balance your personal healing while still showing up for those who needed you?
It was not conscious. I mean, it just as a mother, right? I mean, the love that I feel for my sons, I don't have words for, right? So I was conscious and unconsciously motivated, to mother them so differently, right? To give them a different experience while informed by the magnetism of my mother, right? What she was able to do in terms of loving me, like the felt sense of that is unlike a love I've never known other than the love of God. And so I certainly wanted to do that for them because of my awakening, right? And what I understood. I knew it was my mission, right? This incarnation and probably every incarnation to help people remember the truth.
And I think you do that beautifully. I know your book is a memoir, but it read like a guide almost to me. I was curious, was there any themes or lessons that revealed themselves to you only after writing the book?
No. I had
Love that
done
answer.
I had done so much conscious
Okay.
processing.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the only thing that I felt more deeply after finishing it was this I don't even know what the word is, appreciation, I guess, for lack of a better word, of my resilience.
Oh, that's beautiful. Oh, I love that. That's beautiful. Since this book is deeply personal, was there a particular part of your journey that was hardest to write about?
No.
I love that too. Oh, you were so
No,
aligned.
I mean, I knew that there would be people like my ex-husband displeased with what I wrote. And yet I put so much care into it. There's so much more I could have said.
It felt very careful and loving.
Yeah.
It felt like it came from like a positive, loving space. I feel like you portrayed that well.
Thank you, because I do love him.
It showed.
I mean, it's not his fault that I fell in love with him. It makes perfect sense. Of course, the connection would be incredibly intense and chaotic. It's
Yeah, it's real life.
full of hardship. No, it was a reflection of what I had known
Yeah,
as a kid, almost perfectly. Just was. And yeah, I mean, I pray for him almost every day. Um, yeah, he's the
that's
father of
yeah,
my kids,
yeah. You
even though
shared
they are men with beards.
you shared some deeply personal letters, including to your ex-husband, your children, and even the surgical team that saved your life. What gave you the courage to be so vulnerable? And what was the experience like sharing such raw emotions with the world?
I didn't think about it at all. I mean, um, it wasn't hard. It just wasn't. And I was so convinced, right, for
Hmm.
lack of a better word, of the usefulness of the share, right?
Yeah,
That, I mean, I think it's important for people if they're going to have like a life-threatening event and they're going to need some kind of intervention to offer that level of care and devotion to their medical team,
yeah,
right? Like Dr. Damiano, the chief of cardiovascular at Barnes Hospital, best hospitals in the world, has that iron heart in his office behind his desk. Like that whole experience for him, because I've spoken to him about it, or even to my cardiologist or my surgical nurse who willed me
mhm,
in, who's a friend and follows me on social media. Like we all know that we had experienced a miracle and
yeah,
something profound. And I believe my devotional practice and the energetics that I brought into surgery that day and all the preparation and the prayer and my gratitude and bringing them into my prayers every day before, like that mattered. Like that made a difference. I'm
oh,
sure of it.
absolutely. I just actually, I'll just share. When you said that, I had like an image of you being wheeled into like your surgical suite, and Archangel Raphael was like part of the team wheeling you in. Just thought I'd share that.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I see
There
him
were
like
some
scrubbed in and like participating. So,
there were some real heavy hitters.
yeah. Oh, I have full body chills right now. Okay, on that note, through your writing, you have demonstrated an incredible ability to trust your intuition even in the hardest moments. Was that always natural for you, or did you develop that over time?
Yes and yes. Yeah, I mean the profundity of my inner life, as a young girl, being able to just hear things.
Hmm.
And even when I decided at the age of 9 that it all needed to stop for reasons described in the book, I think I still had probably a more conscious inner life than most people,
Hmm.
even though it was down. And I shared that moment as a preteen going to the orthodontist with my mother, and it's quiet in the car, which is a miracle in and of itself. If you knew my mother, I mean, she was, you know, constantly going. And I was looking at the window, kind of, dating, and that trusted voice said, "You need to repeat the ninth grade." And I just knew the truth of it. And so I looked to my mother, who's driving. I said, "Mom, I need to repeat the ninth grade." And as you might remember, she said, "Oh, honey, I don't know a thing about that, but you have my full support." And then I gave a presentation to the Board of Education of my district. There was no mechanism to allow a straight A student to be held back. But I was almost 2 years ahead of myself because of my grade school and the self paced nature of it. And
Hmm.
I was bullied and I was so little. And Yeah, and that was a turning point in my adolescent life. I mean, that truly changed the trajectory of my young life, that decision. So, when you make decisions like that, particularly young, you experience the positive consequence of
Hmm.
heeding that, right? Then the next time that voice tells you something, you're more inclined to do it. You know what that voice of guidance sounds like there's a certain
Yeah.
audible quality to it, and there's a felt sense, right? There's a feeling resonance to it as well. And so, I mentioned in the book that happened again into my senior year of high school. I was doing nothing but partying and trying to escape my house because it was like one flew over the cuckoo's nest in there.
Yeah.
All I wanted to do was have a good time
Yeah.
and have safe places to go, sleepovers. So popularity and social ascendance, man, that was my focus. It was quite strategic. And then, in the summer, in that little fort that I made in my bedroom, and the guidance saying, it's time, like study and do your homework. And then I was a straight A student my senior year, and it was easy peasy. I could have done that. I mean, most of my like friends from grade school who I was, ahead of,
Hmm.
we all kind of knew where we were. They, most of them went to Harvard.
Yeah.
I didn't. I was, anyway, and that's fine. I don't regret it. I've heeded divine guidance, I think, most of my life. The difference was how conscious I was that that was what I was doing. And then, post awakening, that's probably all I did.
Yeah.
I mean, even like jobs that I took or being able to manifest, the next opportunity or heeding divine guidance about changing, employers,
Yeah.
some of that I, talk about in the book. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
you
just
took major leaps of faith, trusting that guidance. Some of them I was like, I felt you on the job journey. Like right now, things are just feel so unsettled in America and the job market. It just feels it's a weird time right now. And just I know that it is not unlike the weird times it was when you experienced it, and just your unwavering faith and just trusting that guidance, and you were never let down.
not one.
So, throughout your journey, that leads to this question. Well, I think throughout your journey, you have experienced powerful synchronicities. How do you interpret these signs and what role that they have played in your healing?
Well, I think a lot of it seems like it's synchronistic, and it really isn't. It's born from surrendered intention, So in my practice, even before I was disciplined, I was prayerful, right? And my prayer was always to be an agent of the highest good. And I, would ask quite strategically, I would say, sweet loving spirit, angels of love, light, my guides and guardians, ancestors of the highest vibration and intention, Yeshua, Mary Magdalene, and now a set, a different, person that I call on. And I ask for the insights, the resources, and the people to come forth to support my highest expression, my highest good, and not praying with specific. I mean,
Mm.
a lot of people, they pray for something, they want X, right?
Yeah.
I don't think that's the way to do it. I,
No.
I think divine will and divine path isn't something So ask for what that is, right? And then be aware of when it's telling you, okay, now is the time to do X. Don't pray X,
Yeah.
right? Pray to be shown and for the people, the insights, the resources to come forth. And, at least in my life, that's worked really well.
I relied heavily on synchronicities and signs at the start of my spiritual awakening because I had so much egoic doubt and chatter, and I would try to
Mm.
explain things away. I had a really challenging time with that. So I deeply appreciated some of the synchronistic stories that you shared, but especially the Queen Elizabeth one. Like those are the big
Oh,
ones
wasn't
that
that
I needed.
funny? That
Those
was
are the things
hilarious.
I needed, those giant like boom synchronicities. And when I read that, I was like, oh, she was where she was meant to be.
Well, and I think it was more in being led to that conference room with that name, given the conversation I had had that morning. It was more validation that
Yeah.
what I was experiencing, the impact that was having on my energetic system was true,
Yeah.
that it wasn't, something I was making up. And so I was so grateful. I'm like, hey, yeah, thanks.
That's part of why I really look at your book as a guide in addition to a memoir, because there's all these things that I picked out that just helped me on my journey. And I feel like they would help other people making sense of everything. I feel like you touched on such a wide range of just life things that happen. And I just think it's a really well-written, enjoyable story that is a tool as well.
I'm so glad because that was my intent. And
Okay.
it's funny because I was directed in meditation a few months ago and I've done nothing about it yet. I mean, it took me over a decade to write Tragic Magic, so we'll see how long this takes. But what I was directed to do was title it How, because there is some how, certainly, in the sharing of my story, but I have a lot more to say.
And I agree. If I was not on a spiritual awakening path or, I hadn't experienced it yet, your story would be a well-written, enjoyable, relatable story. But because I feel like I'm not on the other side of a spirit, it's sort of, I'm a few years into this now. I can pick up on what those tools are. So yeah, I think if you actually sat down with the intention of writing the workbook, I think you would do amazing, and I think it would really help a lot of people. I think you have a way with words that's relatable and comforting, safe, but also you have the confidence too that is trusting. So I can see why you did so well in your career that you were in.
Right, right. And I got a lot of that from my parents.
Yeah,
I
you had a
mean,
really interesting
we're exceptional
yeah.
and dysregulated, but exceptional.
Yeah. And
You
I
know,
believe too, I don't know if you believe, I believe in pre-birth planning so that we kind of plan some of the challenges that we're meant to learn in life. And I was just picking those out as I was reading your story, thinking about why you chose the mom that you chose, or, her issues that she had, and the dad and his role in your life. And so it was a joy to read.
oh
What?
yeah, and it kind of all fit perfectly together. Like I
Agreed.
understand now, right?
Yeah.
The cosmic purpose in all of it, and I have nothing but gratitude for my mom and my dad and my stepdad and all of it. Yeah, it's like it was what I needed to become who I am.
I think it's really interesting too. Just in my own life, I look at my struggles and I think like I could have reacted in a different way, or I could have chose not to forgive. I could have, and I just think about where I'd be if I had, made different decisions and all that. And I just really think that when I use that lens looking at your book, I would say you're definitely learning the lessons your soul put out there to learn. I think you're doing a wonderful job.
Well, yeah, and if you could have done it differently, you would have.
Oh
So the greatest harm you can give yourself is to try to impose the consciousness that you now have
yeah.
on your former self.
Oh yeah,
That's like
yeah.
that's like so unfair.
Yeah,
That's
don't do
just like
that. I
that's
just like
super
looking at it at the
unfair.
lens of growth. Like I'm just proud of myself of what I've done with the tools that I had, and I know the tools I had are because I chose the parents that I did, and I know that my soul has evolved in this life. Grateful
Yeah,
for
and you're just a baby. Like how old are you? You're like
I am
30 something?
38.
I got
That's
20
why
years on you.
that's why I see so much of myself in your story because you wrote it starting, your spiritual awakening was at 27 and you wrote it up until current time. So it's been interesting to see myself in your story.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Let's see, what's the core message you want readers to receive from Tragic Magic?
Keep going.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's one. I mean, there's, I think, a lot of messages.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the most important is the reason you exist is to learn how to embody the love of God. There's no other reason for your existence. And so all of the stuff, particularly how we treat young people, like, where are you going to college and what are you
Yeah.
majoring in? Blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh my golly, like those are important questions if you think the purpose of human existence is material success and acquisition. Okay. Just know that you're here to learn how
Yeah.
to love as Jesus taught, right? Or the other master teachers taught.
Yeah.
That is why you're here. And the only way to learn truly how to do that is to sit in the quiet and intend learn it.
There's a line in your book. I didn't write it down, so forgive me that I don't get the quote perfect. How do you integrate living an awakened life in a world that's not yet awakened, or something like that?
Yeah.
I reread that line so many times, and that hit a chord within me because sometimes when I'm at like just in my life or at work and I hear people, kind of complaining about their lives, I'm like, don't you want to do something about it? Like you gotta forgive this person and love yourself and then there's so many times I'm like screaming that in my head. And so when I read that line, how do you integrate the two?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the hardest part.
Yeah.
Uh, and I find myself even, today catching myself in judgment,
Oh yeah. I
because it all seems so absurd. Right? It's just like this couldn't be more absurd right now. Yeah, there's a funny video on my Instagram that I pinned about football season has begun. And anyway, it starts there. Yeah, that's the hard part. And mine is, I'm sure you know that this is true for me. You can't tell anybody anything.
no.
So quit trying.
Yeah.
And what you can do energetically is send them the energy of divine love when they're sitting there complaining,
Yeah.
right? When you're judging, like, God, I wish they would get it, right? Like, don't do that because that's a vibration and a
Yeah.
frequency. So that's not really help them. But can you love them unconditionally and to convey that energetically? Because frankly, the only way that you can truly help any of this nonsense that's going on is to vibrate as aligned with your divinity as you can. And every day's different. Some days are harder than others, but have that be your intention.
I
Have that be
definitely
the thing that you try to do.
I definitely embodied that with my husband. I shared with you before we started recording. We were both atheists when we, all dating and into our early marriage. And I had this explosive spiritual awakening and he didn't. And I had to respect that. And I just prayed and gave it to God. And I just kept saying, I had a knowing that if we were meant to stay together, our paths would align in some way that was for the greatest good of both of us. So I really did watch him go through some things. And I just let it happen without judgment and just with love and just a knowing that what is meant to be will transpire. And I never would have imagined that he is on the journey he's on now. I honestly didn't even see it coming. He had his own spiritual awakening in a way that made sense for him. And now he is into Reiki healing. He's into sound baths. He meditates and was telling me about seeing Metatron in a meditation. And I mean, we were just two scientists that did not believe that there was anything after we passed away. And I just am so grateful to be on this journey with him. But yeah, I definitely know that if I had pushed him to do this, and not we'd be divorced. We would have never, it never would have landed.
Yeah, I remember something funny my mother said that I don't think I put in the book. She was hilarious. But anyway, when I made the decision to take Bruce Cryer, the CEO of HeartMath, up on his offer to become part of the staff, right, and completely redesign my life. My ex-husband sold his companies, which incredibly generous to do. And, here we are driving to California, right? But my mother said, "Oh, honey, nobody's going to change because they go to your workshop." And she said,
Sometimes we
"You
need
have such
that.
beautiful legs. Why not become like a pantyhose model or something?" She's like, there's better money in it. It's easier. She
I love
she was hilarious. Yeah. Yeah.
That's really funny.
I mean, we can teach, right? There are things that I know that I can share
Yeah.
that may land, right? And truly be of service to someone. Or maybe 20 years from now, they have a moment of remembering something
Yeah.
I said because they're now ready
Yeah.
for it. Right. So, I mean, we still need to do what we can, just do it without expectation.
Yeah, without expectation, absolutely. I feel that personally deeply. I like to think of myself as like a teacher or guidance for others on, similar paths. And yeah, you can if someone had been like, Amber, you have all this trauma from your mom and your dad. This is all you need to do, and it's going to facilitate all this healing. I would have been like, okay, and like kick rocks. So yeah, I love that. Can you talk about how people can work with you? Because I know you do
Oh,
your
yeah, sure. So
programs.
they can read my book. They can go on my website on regancaruthers.com and read the other stories and some of the practices that I share there. That's one way to work with me. If they really want to work with me, then they sign up for a discovery call on my website for my inner life coaching. No one is coached the same. It's an intuitively led process. But for those that are looking to heal, like they're earnest, they're ready. They are ready to develop a spiritual practice. Doesn't have to be mine that they emulate. I'll give them a buffet of options. It's like the cafeteria of spiritual practice, and pick, what you feel you can do, what feels resonant. And then I'm your accountability partner in that. Anyway, they can sign up for a discovery call where they share their goals and I talk about my approach. And if they feel resonant, then we figure it out. If they're in the St. Louis metropolitan area, they can certainly come to a Set Yoga Center. I teach yoga on Saturdays, always as an act of service. I never charge. And that is not about just movement. I've gone to a lot of yoga classes around here. Maybe it's because I was in Santa Cruz, California for so long. Um, but anyway, we're doing real yoga here.
I tell my husband, Pilates is a workout, yoga's like a lifestyle.
Yeah, there's this funny Indian comedian whose name I don't remember. Sent it as a story on Instagram. I don't know, last week or something when I found it. It was hilarious. And she was, kind of imitating the Western woman yogi, with her $600 yoga pants
Yeah.
and her, all her perfect equipment rushing to yoga, right? And she said, if you're rushing to yoga, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah. It's so true.
Yeah, so I try to educate those that come here what yoga practice is. And to your point, it's more than a lifestyle. I mean, yes, you live your life a certain way as a yoga practitioner, but it's informed by the Yoga Sutras, by the 8 limbs of yoga. And asana, which is the physical practice of yoga, is one of the 8.
Yeah.
And in Sanskrit, asana just means to so anyway, yeah, and then I do other things here. I have trained, people in the heart math method here a number of times. I offer my Ready to Awaken courses, which I'm thinking of figuring out how to do that online so
Yeah.
that people can benefit from that because it's really good content. And then my best friend is a medicine woman, and she and Naomi, who's Navajo, come once a quarter here to facilitate ceremony. So that's always an option for people that are more local.
That is
Or
incredible.
they could fly in and do it and, rent an Airbnb. Yeah, in fact, the next medicine ceremony is June 21st, which is on the summer
I
solstice.
was gonna say, yes. Okay.
So you
Powerful
could fly
timing.
here. You could
Powerful
fly here with your non-atheist husband and experience that together. If you're interested, I can send you details. They're remarkable women. My best friend, the medicine woman, cured herself of breast cancer. So,
I love hearing stories like that. That's incredible. Ah, Regan, this has been such a powerful conversation. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, your story, and the incredible synchronicities that have guided you. I know so many listeners will deeply resonate with your journey. I encourage everyone to get Tragic Magic. This book is more than a memoir, it's a guide for healing, trusting the journey, and recognizing the magic and synchronicities. Thank you again for being here. I really enjoyed our talk today.
well, I enjoyed it too. And thank you for loving my book. I can't tell you how wonderful that feels to hear that from you. So please share it with the world.
I've
Um,
already. This conversation was such a powerful reminder that healing doesn't always look like what we expect. And when we start trusting the unseen, we open ourselves to so much more connection, comfort, and meaning. If Reagan's words resonated with you, I highly recommend checking out her book, Tragic Magic. I'll drop the link in the show notes. And if this episode stirred something within you, I'd love to hear what came through. As we continue this season of Everything Embodiment, I'll be sharing more stories and tools to help you connect to your own intuitive path. And if you're feeling ready to dive in, head to my website, Everything Embodiment. You can book an intuitive session with me or order a copy of your own birth chart report. And to get your birth chart, all you need is your date, place, time of birth, and you will get a PDF that breaks down your sun, moon, and rising signs and all your key astrological placements, all explained in a grounded, easy to understand way to help you connect with your purpose, patterns, and potential. Find me on TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube, and you can catch me in a live where I offer mini sessions and guidance in real time. Everything you need is in the show notes. And as always, thank you for being here. Please like, share, review the podcast, and thank you for listening and for choosing to live a more fully embodied life.